It's your girl Boonie, and you're listening to episode 85 of the Boonie Breakdown podcast. The podcast where we sometimes cry, we always laugh, we might get a bit ratchet, but we're forever going to break it down. Your source for all things responsible and ratchet. All right, we're back. Another new episode of the Boonie Breakdown. And today's guest for this week's episode are the lovely Julien and Kiersten of Rich and Regular. You know, I was excited when I discovered them, and I hope they can inspire you in some of the same ways that they've inspired me to get your coins right, like right now. What I loved about them is that they were a couple who were aligned and were simultaneously working on financial goals, and not only working on them, but they're working on them together and accomplishing them together. So we chat about all of that, how they were able to do that, how they handle their finances, but also balance sometimes a family member who might depend on you or need you a little bit too much. And we also chat exactly what does it mean to be financially independent. I feel like that's like the new buzzword in the financial community. And if you aren't living, breathing that, it might sound a little foreign to you. So they explain all of that. So stick around for the conversation. I want to hop right into Boonie's pick of the week, and I think it aligns with this episode perfectly. And for me, it was the pick of the week was the government shutdown. Now, I know some of y'all are probably like, wait a minute, the government, by the time this episode airs, the government has only been open for a week. So what you happy about, right? And for me, it was a true blessing in disguise. For me, I was personally affected by it. I don't talk much about the 9-to-5 on here for obvious reasons, but not being able to receive a paycheck, and for this timing to happen at the beginning of the new year, it gave me everything I needed to have these creative bursts and to put the energy into the Boonie Breakdown, right? And it also timed perfectly with some of the financial goals that I wanted to do. And it ignited in me the passion to get this debt gone. And that's where I was slowly moving. As I wrote down how much debt I was going into 2019 with, what were the goals, what I wanted by the time we hit 2020, what I wanted to be zero. And then for this shutdown to happen, I'm like, this proves the point all the more. And it ignited the fire in me to do this even more because, you know, at a moment's notice now, I could have no income, right? But it might be okay if I have my savings and I'm not giving out all my money to Chase, to Discover, to whoever I owe it to. And so for me, it was a blessing in disguise. And I do feel for some of my colleagues and people who got the residual effects of the government shutdown, who were put immediately into dire situations. And so tying this into the housekeeping, the feedback from the episode with Chrissy and Sheikah, really, and we talked about our openness and how we're going to therapy. And one of my assignments from therapy was to learn how to accept help. And part of this with the government shutdown, people who were reaching out to me who know my situation and knew that I wasn't getting paid were like, do you need anything? And so it was another bless because it gave me practice to say yes or to say no or not right now. I'm okay. But people who were insisting on helping and wanted to, and I love them and appreciate them for that, it also gave me the practice to start accepting help, okay? And so for me, I know for some people, it might not have been the same situation. They might not have been able to see the same blessing in the shutdown, but I hope at least the lesson you learn, and after listening to this episode, it inspires you to take the steps, to take the path, to move towards financial independence, okay? So we're going to skip on into housekeeping. I'm going to hop off my soapbox, but I really do mean it. And I think that it just gave me so much clarity, and it was a nice cocoon to be in for a little bit, because I was not in a situation knowing that I was going to get evicted. I didn't have to worry about where, I was getting my next meal, etc. And so for me, it just really gave me the push, the fire I needed to be like, you know what? I'm going to keep growing this brand. I'm going to keep doing the things that I love. And at the same time, I'm going to use the funds from the 9-to-5 to get this debt gone. And you'll hear further in this episode, we talk about sacrifice. And I remember Julien specifically says, he goes in depth about that word. And so stick around for that later. On to housekeeping. Feedback from episode 85. You guys, I know a few of you ordered your vibrator from Dane Products. Okay, don't forget the code. I know it was some confusion last week because in the episode we said the code was Boonie. The show notes, the code was Boonie10. So it is Boonie10. So go ahead on over there and grab some self-care. So because of the response from the Ratchet Box of Love, I actually singled out some people who were like, oh, I just want the cards. And so you can get Boonie's Ratchet Notes. So to get all of these items, you can head on over to the BoonieBreakdown.com/shop. Of course, it's linked in the show notes. But Boonie's Ratchet Notes is just a little 6-card gift set. There's some little racy, little raunchy, little ratchet card you might want to drop in the mail to someone or drop in a gift to someone too. So you can check all of those out. Of course. In addition, one way you can help me out is I love those reviews. I love it when you tag me and give me feedback from the episode, right? So you can do those in many ways. You can send me an email over to theboonieBreakdown@gmail.com. You can shoot it over at the contact page at theboonieBreakdown.com/contact. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, The Boonie Breakdown. You can follow us on Twitter, Boonie Breakdown. And when sharing this episode and letting everyone know what you listened to, please use the hashtag The Boonie Breakdown, the hashtag PODIN, PODIN. As you know, as I always say, if your page is open, I will always respond, share, and communicate with you once you tag or use the hashtag. All right, so that's it, guys. So let's get ready to break it down. Hey guys, it's your girl Boonie, and I'm really excited for today's episode. It's a responsible themed one, but I told them that they can cuss, and I hope that they do. So I would like to welcome Julien and Kiersten Saunders to the podcast. Welcome.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
What the fuck is up?
Yes, let's get it going. They run the Rich and Regular podcast, and I have to shout out a past guest, Jamila Souffrant of Journey to Launch. I found out about this lovely couple from her podcast, and what I loved about them is that they looked like me. They were Black. As I said on that episode with Jamila, that was my first time actually hearing about financial independence. I did not know that was a word for people in this debt-free movement. Yeah. And now that I'm so fascinated by it, I keep soaking it up. But I feel more empowered when it's a Black person or a brown person, and it's like, you can do it.
Exactly. I mean, it's a different journey. Like, we have to tell our story a little bit differently as people of color, as Black people, than what's mostly out there. So I'm the same way. I'm naturally attracted to any Black people talking about money.
Me too. And I think the thing I also loved about your story was how you guys did it together as a couple, because I know this is another excuse, but when I see people who are like single and they're like, oh, I paid off. I'm like, how did you do this? And then you click the article and it's like, I moved back in with my parents and paid them $20 rent. And I was able to pay, save $80,000 in a year. And it's like, well, that's not realistic for a lot of people. But I liked that it was a couple, like you guys came together and said, this is our goal for our life, for our future. And so that was inspiring to me.
I love it. Quick correction. We don't have a podcast. They've been pushing us to do a podcast, but we actually don't have a podcast. We have a blog, richandregular.com, but we don't have a podcast, ... yet.
Look, by the time this airs, I think you should have a podcast.
I see what you're trying to do.
See, I'm talking it into existence for you guys.
Man.
But I know you have the baby, and
Yeah.
I would say podcasting is a lot. So I understand.
We've heard, and that's exactly why we were like, you know what, I'm gonna just try to get on other people's podcasts and just have fun with that rather than setting up the little closet studio that I think a lot of people have, which is, I love the hustle, I love the grind, but I will say a lot of podcasters that we know like complain about how much work it is, and we don't really.
It is a lot, so
and that's
I understand.
It's easy, but it just seems like it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think it's just like a different push, especially depending on how you decide to set up your show. I keep saying you guys are going to do it, but I'll leave that decision to y'all. But I want to hop into it.
Let's do it.
Okay. I guess a little background. How did you guys meet? How did you become a couple? And then how did you decide we're going to go on this path together?
So we met at work. It's the most unromantic story ever. We were in the same conference room, and I looked at him and I was like, damn, okay.
Ooh.
But we didn't start dating immediately. That was just my reason.
Okay.
So it took a couple months before we actually started dating, but we saw each other, pretty much every day because we were in the same office. At the time, I had quite a bit of credit card debt and some other like consumer debt. I had a car note. I was a spender. I was fly. I was in my 20s, having the $200 brunches every week. So at the time, I was spending a lot and Julien was not. And so how finances came up is we decided to take a trip together about 3 months after we started dating. And at the end of that trip, he realized that I had put it on my credit card, and his ass was like, if I had known that you were going to put it on a credit card, if I had known that you had credit card debt, I would have never started dating you. So
are you serious?
I offended my way into a money conversation, and then he offended me back. So
that's terrifying.
I know, and rude, right?
It was. I'm not gonna lie. I've heard that story a couple of times now. I'm not gonna go into my full rebuttal, but I will say the reason why I said what I said was because I had just come out of a situation where money was problematic and it was an issue. And so I just knew that I didn't want no parts of having to deal with like money issues or money challenges. And certainly if somebody was going to be like not transparent about it. So that was where I was coming from. I obviously it was poor word choice, but it came from a good place. And look at us.
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, look at you. It paid off, but wow. So was that kind of like a hook for you a little bit to be like, oh, I got to get my shit together because he's a good guy and I don't want to lose him. So I'm going to see what this is about.
Yes. Eventually I got to that point. I think initially I was just mad as hell. Like, because I had never, I just never had thought about credit card debt as being something bad. Like I assumed everybody used, that's what they were for. Everybody uses credit cards to travel. There's whole ass travel credit cards.
Yeah.
I had never thought about, I never felt any sort of shame around my financial choices. And he was the first one that made me feel that. And so it took a while for me to get past that to start to say, okay, well, maybe he has a point. Debt is problematic. Debt does prevent you from living, your fullest and best life. So I eventually came around, but I won't pretend it was instant.
Yeah, because I'm like 3 months into dating to already have a conversation about, debt at least. I don't know if it was detailed like I have X amount of credit card debt. But the fact that he was just because you have some,
Yeah.
Well, so
I don't even know how I would have responded to that, honestly.
It was not just the fact that she had the debt, right? So I talked about why I felt, so passionate about drawing a line in the sand, but it was also because, as she said, the sort of lifestyle that she was leading, right? So it was like, all right, so you are in debt, you are spending like crazy. I know this because I see it. And so I was like, yo, this is getting bigger and bigger every single weekend, right? And so That's really what I was reacting to. It was her relationship.
You saw the behavior.
It was her relationship with money that was, apparent, because we were spending a lot of time together. So for me, we were just living it up. We were having a great time. And so for me, it was like, yeah, I mean, we got it like that. Shit is great. And then come to find out, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. It was luggage, just baggage. I didn't realize that because I thought we were just like, free, and just wilding out and having a good time. And so, and I cared about it. And so I was like, wow, I knew enough to know that our mindset at that time was so different that it really would have been a waste of time to ignore what I saw as a really, really big red flag. And so luckily she kind of took it as a challenge. And we came together and, we were transparent about not just where we are, but where we wanted to be. And ultimately that led to where we are today.
So where did your money acumen come from? Like, how did you develop a relationship with money to know that, I don't want to have debt, I want to have savings? Because it seems like you maybe had some type of knowledge that your wife didn't, or your girlfriend at the time.
I think it came from, no one's ever asked me that question. I think part of it is just being from Brooklyn, honestly, and having a little bit of like a hustle and hustler mentality. So that's a part of it. The second part was being in grad school. And so I moved to Atlanta when I was like 16. And when I was in grad school, getting my MBA, I just remember just learning a lot about business and realizing that I can apply a lot of these lessons about business to my personal finances. And so it just became kind of a fun little challenge for me. And I've always been one to like look ahead. And so, even in those earlier days, I was thinking about real estate investing and just other ways to make money. Like I knew that I couldn't just get a job and let that be my only source of income. And I didn't know how, I didn't know anything really. I just knew that, all right, there's the job and then there's got to be like 3 to 4 other things going on, just going on in the background. And so I've just always kind of had that mindset. But also, I was a homeowner and living by myself for a while, and money was tight, so it just kind of forced me to straighten up because, when you have a mortgage on your back, it's like, you'll mess around and lose your house and destroy your credit and things that can get ugly really quickly. So I just kind of had that discipline. And I think that natural interest just from the environment that I've been around.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think, growing up for me, no one talked about money really. And my grandmother was kind of the person who I would always go to. I skipped my mom. And I used to joke because I told my grandmother, like when I got older, I was like, I would have thought the Lord was a banker because every time I would go to her, I'd be like, at school, they need us to buy this $200 calculator or we have to do this. And I would ask her for the money and she'd be like, the Lord gonna make a way. And then I would have the calculator. So I have no idea what she did. If she went to a savings account, she put it on a credit. I have no idea. But I just know everything I asked for, I had it. So I used to joke with her like, the Lord was a banker because every time I asked you for money, that's what she would just say. It would happen and it was like a miracle. So I don't know what she was doing with her money, but I just know we had it. And I kind of feel like that trickled into my behavior, which I'm now trying to have, like you just said, the discipline to correct some of these things that I picked up as a child. Like, spend it, you got it. You work hard, treat yourself. Like, that's where I kind of fall in. So I get you, Kiersten.
Yeah, I was full of I deserve. I definitely felt like I deserved twice as much as what I was making at the time, and I spent about that much. So
what was the first thing, like once you guys got on the same page, like, okay, we're on this journey to financial independence, what was the first thing you did?
We took a piece of paper and a pen and wrote down all of my debts. So every credit card, every, car note. Well, I only had one car note, but you know what I mean? Car notes, bills, just all of my expenses. And then obviously wrote down my income and started to develop a plan around how long it would take to pay it off and what I would need to do to pay it off. And at that time, Julien was like, one day you're going to look back at this amount of money and laugh at how, in a tizzy it had you, or, something like that. It was just,
I ain't
you didn't say tizzy?
In a tizzy. I ain't never said in a tizzy in my life.
You did say in a tizzy.
Damn tizzy. Fuck out of here.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah. Okay.
But you did tell me that I was going to laugh about it. And he's right. Because I think the total, at the time of credit card debt was somewhere around $9,000 or $10,000. But it was the kind of $9,000 or $10,000 that wasn't going down. I was making interest only payments every month because I was just paying the minimum balance. And so it was never moving. And I just felt like I would never be able to get rid of it. And I know a lot of people with student loan debt feel the same way because all you're really doing is just buying more time by paying that interest only. Yeah. And so as soon as I understood that and found new ways to dig into the principal by, trimming expenses in other areas, I started to feel like I was getting somewhere.
Yeah, no, I think after I had Sonia, the student loan doctor, on, I sat down. I love her. And I sat down and look, I calculated how much interest on my student loans. And I'm like, oh my God, this is why the balance doesn't move, because I'm paying $400, but it's accruing $900 in interest a month. Yeah. It's never moving. I'm like, this is why. Yeah. So, and I've totally reached the point now where I'm just I'm sick of paying other people my money.
That's it. That was,
yeah. And
that was exactly what I needed, where it was would you leave a $500 tip at Chick-fil-A? Well, then you should be just as concerned about the $500 that you write to Bank of America every month that doesn't get you any benefit. It's the same $500, it's the same dollar. And as soon as I understood that, you don't want to just put your money on fire in the middle of the floor, then it gave me what I needed to focus and get the balance down.
We keep throwing out the word financial independence, and maybe some people listening might not know what that means. And so would you guys mind explaining that, and then what financial independence looks like for you?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because that term, it is used a lot. And so there is financial independence. And I think people hear independence and they oftentimes think, financial freedom as well. And they say that's the goal. But literally, there is a definition for financial independence. And so what it basically means is when you reach a point where your investments earn enough money, right? So you have money in the bank, or you have, let's say, real estate, or you have other investment vehicles that earn interest and it compounds every single year. When the total of that growth meets the amount that you consume on a regular basis, then basically you don't have to work for money anymore. Your money essentially covers your cost of living. So a really simple example is, let's say you have $1 million, right, in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and real estate and all of these other things. And between dividends and rent collected and all of these other different ways that you can receive money from those investment vehicles, you get, let's say, $40,000. If you live off of $40,000, then basically you can live off of your investments. You don't have to go get a job. You can if you want to, or you can start a business or do whatever you want. But the point in which you meet and where your investments basically meets your cost of living or your consumption on an annual basis, you are considered financially independent.
Got it. So are you guys financially independent, or how much time, or on your goal plan, how much more time is left for you to be financially independent?
We are not financially independent now. My best guess would be around 3 years from now. But it really just depends, right? So literally the stock market is going to shit as we speak. And so
literally
as we speak. And so, obviously that shrinks, but, depending on the type of investor you are, this is a great opportunity to buy. It's basically a Black Friday sale on stocks and bonds, right? And so if you can buy and get a great value now, and you believe in the growth opportunities and sustainability of the market, then basically that money will grow and will pay you back 3, 4, 5 times over a certain period of time. So we're not financially independent right now. My guess would be around 3 years, but it really just depends. And for us, it's a feeling. I mean, we could move some money around right now, sell a couple things, and technically be financially independent. But our goal is that we want to have a certain quality of life, and there's certain things we want to do. Mm-hmm. And there are other things that kind of complicate that. We have a kid. We may decide to have another child. We also, let's keep it real, like my mom, we just wrote about this on the blog. She is not in the most, financially comfortable situation in the world. She's technically, I guess, what's considered financially insecure. And so we have to factor in potentially having to support her as well. And so it's a little difficult for us to just nail down a number right now, because that number could change tomorrow.
Gotcha. So how much debt did you guys, once you came up with your plan, how much debt did you pay off over what time period?
We paid off about $200,000 over 5 years. And that included our primary mortgage. So, yeah.
Wow.
It was a mixture of our primary mortgage. It was 2 cars, some student loan debt, obviously credit cards that I talked about before, some tax debt. It was just a stack of debt. But the bulk of that was the house we were living in at the time.
That's what's up. During that time, what did you have to sacrifice in order to become debt free? So did you have to give up your vacations, Starbucks, gifts to each other?
Yep.
That's so hard.
We still traveled. We just traveled differently. So we would be really focused to try and use points and discounts where applicable. The locations that we traveled to were very strategic. So like we would take a trip to, Thailand, where the US dollar is super strong. So once you get there, you live like a king.
Yeah, very cheap.
So little things like that. I mean, we traveled a lot in the US to make sure that, we weren't having to pay international flight prices. We definitely gave up, Starbucks and expensive date nights. We cooked a lot at home, and that was a huge catalyst for saving gobs of money. And what else did we do?
She mentioned something little things like, we would set and create like gift caps, right? So if it's a birthday, and it's funny because we don't talk about that often, but that is definitely something that we do. And say, all right, listen, this Christmas, it's a $50 cap, and so you get the best thing you can get or whatever you want to get for $50. Another sort of I'm going to call it a sacrifice, but I guess it's more of a tactic, is even giving, right? Like you got to put a cap on that, and we would budget for that. We would say, listen, we want to help people, but we can't help everybody. And so this is how much we're going to set aside to help anybody that's in need, or it may be to support a particular cause, because, or whatever it is. And we just set a cap to that, as opposed to just leaving it all open, which has been helpful for us because, we can say, hey, we can help, but this is how much we have allocated to help. And we're willing to give that to you, and it's better than saying no. But yeah, I don't like the word sacrifice. It was more like trade-offs. Because for us, it was a matter of saying, we're not going to spend money today on this thing. We're going to put that money to work and allow that money to grow so that we can then get this bigger thing, which is really freedom, true freedom, and owning your time at some point in the near future. And so it was a bit of a trade-off, or at least I just like the way trade-off feels more.
No, I can rock with that, because sacrifice, that makes it sound hard. Like, I can never have like
our elders
Starbucks again.
My mama sacrificed,
yeah, we still have Wi-Fi.
We got Wi-Fi there.
We didn't have cable, but we did have Wi-Fi.
Real talk.
Well, oh my God, I'm so moving there. Like I just said, this Comcast bill too damn high.
Girl,
so it's just going to be Wi-Fi. Like I can't pay y'all no more money.
I don't even remember the last time we had cable.
It's been 6 or 7 years. We were early cord color.
Yeah. Damn.
And now
I've only heard people be like 2 or 3. 7 years. And not even that it sounds so hard, but that's just like, wow, you were there 7 years ago.
But think about that, right? And so think about that bill that you got, right? And I imagine taking that money 6, 7 years ago.
Oh my God, I just pulled out my calculator. Like, okay.
And investing that money. and growing ever since then. And so we've, when you see that, like when you literally, we've had some Not recently, but I want to say like earlier parts of this year, that Friday night after work, and we just look and see like this crazy growth, and you look at the news and be like, the Dow Jones is going crazy. And then you look at your account and be like, show is. You're like, you know what? Cheers to that, and now it's it's doing the opposite. But yeah, I mean, it's real. Compounding interest is real. Investing is real. The stock markets is real. It's not really that complicated. It takes some trade-offs, and for some people it may take some sacrifices. But we definitely stand by it, and for us, it's paid off.
That's what's up. No, I just really did the math on that, and yeah, that number made me a little sick. So yeah, this is my last month with cable. I actually called them last week to just be like, I just need internet. Like I can't do this anymore.
It's funny,
but yeah, that number just made me really sick. Wow.
And it's easier now than it was when we did it, because
I'm like, what were y'all watching? No, that was a sacrifice because did Netflix existed, right? I don't even know. Did it?
It did. We had an Apple TV, and we bought Netflix at the time, and I don't think we had Hulu at the time. But
Gotcha.
we had an Apple TV that would allow us to stream videos and stuff. But we just bought a new TV for the first time in like 5 or 6 years, a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago. And it's all in the TV. Like, you don't even need
TVs are so sophisticated.
Like,
yeah. They are. I too have not purchased a TV in like, I've been in my house 8 years. So like 8 years. I've not purchased a TV. And so I was at my boyfriend's house, and his TV does everything. I'm like, I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
It's like putting a phone on your wall. Like, it comes with apps and stuff, and you can just watch. You don't need cable. Like, you really don't need cable.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't give them this kind of money every month again. You just mentioned, your mom and how you might have to factor her in to your future plans. Did you guys experience, because I've been recently reading a lot about like the racial wealth gap, and it was a tweet that went viral like maybe 2 weeks ago where the person was like, one of the hardest reasons why Black and brown people can't generate wealth is because the kid who made it and is making a nice salary, it's like, yeah, their disposable income is like mom's light bill money and their little brother's money. They don't get to enjoy their money and invest it in the same way that their white counterparts do. And I know I did have some personal experience with that, with taking care of a parent for an extended period of time. And so did you have to deal with like throughout your journey, like having to say no to family or balancing your goals with financial support of others?
Hell yeah. That is definitely, well, I should say on my side, right? And that's not to call out my mom specifically, but the reason why I'm comfortable saying that is because we just wrote about that. And it was one of the most popular posts that we've had on our blog since we launched it. But yeah, I think it's, and the reason why I wrote about it is because I think it's one of the biggest sort of challenges that I think, particularly young, relatively successful Black millennials are dealing with, but not talking about, right? The fact that, they see all these things out there, they want to live their life, but they hesitant because they know that, any day now they may have to send some money home, or, mama's got a bum knee, or, mama's got blood pressure meds and diabetes meds. And, it's like, damn, they made it. They're doing well in their jobs and their careers and they're growing, but they don't feel like they are because they got all these bills and on top of student loans, on top of high cost of living and all that other stuff. And so it's like, damn, I was like, I made it. And it'll really, mess you up in the head and make you wonder, like, what did I do all this for? Like, I went to school and did everything right. And I did all this stuff only to get here and still feel broke. You know what I mean? So yeah, we absolutely dealt with that. And I'll be blunt, I don't have an answer for it. You know what I mean? It's such a complex and difficult issue. Every family is different. I will say what we did is, and it was a lot of trial and error, but we would start sharing, with them on both sides, a little bit about our approach, a little bit about what we were doing and why we were doing it, and bit by bit. We didn't just, come out of nowhere and say, hey, we're going to drop our expenses really, really low and then retire, in 3 years, and our money is strictly for us. And we didn't do that, because, the reality is life is messier than that. And so, we little by little, bit by bit, and finally they would open up. And what's funny is it wasn't until the blog actually started to get some press, or, something dope would happen, and they'd be like, oh, what's this little thing that y'all doing again? And so it would create an opportunity for them to learn, you know what I mean? And so that's been really helpful. And I know everybody doesn't have that as an opportunity to open up their parents' eyes or ears. But yes, we did deal with that. And I think the answer is, start early and often as possible, and start having those conversations with your parents, because, you realize that they have they grew up and came up in very different times.
Mm-hmm.
And even in some cases, my mom and my whole family is from Jamaica. And so there's a cultural aspect to elders and the level of respect that you have there. It's deep, and so you don't talk about money. You damn sure don't, try to
That's the truth.
You know what I mean? And so, we kind of address a lot of that stuff head on. And luckily we have parents that have been open to it.
Yeah, I know that was the hardest thing for me. I ended up having to get real with myself, because I didn't want to face the fact that I had to change my lifestyle because I was taking care of a parent. And so I'm still out here I'm single, I make good money, I'm gonna do what the hell I want. Mm-hmm. And I'm globetrotting, and not that I spent my money on things. I like to travel. So I'm all right, I can go to Africa, take a Mediterranean cruise, go to Bermuda all in the same year. And that's what I did. But at the same time, I'm paying, mom's bills.
Yeah.
And my bills. Yeah. And eventually, the floor was about to give out a little bit. It's whoa, wait a minute. You have to change some things up. And so I do agree with having the conversation. It wasn't a conversation that was easy to have, to sit down and say, look, I can't be giving you half my paycheck, right? But I had to do it because now I have goals. Like I said, I don't want to be giving my money out to everybody every month for the rest of my life. So
yeah, I mean, that's part of our motivation is that pattern stops here. Dave Ramsey has this saying where, you do the things today so that you can live like no one else tomorrow. And that, financial independence is something that changes the family tree. And that's our goal, is we don't want our son to be 34 with a wife and an infant worried about, how he's going to support Julien and I. We want that stops here. So he will, knock on wood, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, grow up with some level of, investment from us. What's it called? Inheritance. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I can't remember my words, but he's born with a level of support that isn't common in our communities today. We want to be, we want to change that, because that our white counterparts have that. That's the wealth gap.
Yo, their challenge right now is, what do I do with this money? Real
literally
talk. We're part of that. We're in.
It is, and it's little things. I went to a predominantly white high school and middle school. And I remember after college, I went out to dinner and I was talking about, oh yeah, I'm looking for a house, and I went to the mortgage broker, and then I remember this girl turns to me and she's like, "You're putting your house in your name?" And I like whose name would I put it in? And she's like, "You put it in an LLC," and I'm like, "What?" But because her father told her, that's the way she can save money on taxes. But it's just a playbook that they have that we don't have, and little stuff like that she just little tips and knowledge that she knew what to do with her money, that it didn't even cross me. It was just well, I went to the bank and got pre-approved. My credit was good and they gave me a mortgage. And I just, I'm astounded when I read these statistics about how just a simple $30,000, which isn't an exorbitant amount of money, inheritance for a white counterpart, makes leaps and bounds of a difference in their quality of life and financial picture versus Black and brown people.
Absolutely. And that's the part that got me like really fired up about financial independence is you start to read about the amounts that we're talking. 30,000.
It's so little, $30,000.
Yeah. Like this is what's driving a generational crisis, a wealth gap that, you know, our children aren't set up to succeed in the future. Like on top of, you know, climate change, on top of all the things that are coming their way, they also don't have the financial tools that they need to do well. Like, and we're talking about $30,000 or $20,000 or something that doesn't feel like, you know, you would think it'd be 150,000 or 1.1 million. And that's
but it's so little.
Yeah.
Oh, that when I read that, it burned me up. And it was like another thing too. It was saying like, Black people put their money in like safe investments. It was like life insurance, just like their primary residence in real estate. And whites, they do the stock market. They do way riskier investments that give a higher return. And we're slowly moving there, but we aren't there yet.
Yeah. And to be fair, those vehicles and instruments of wealth building weren't always available to us. And so that's why we're missing the playbook, is because our grandparents couldn't.
They didn't know that.
Yeah. Couldn't, or, you know, did and got swindled, right? Like, they at a time where they thought they were doing something good, like with, you know, sharecropping, for example, you end up in a worse off situation. And so you start to build this distrust for systems that are supposed to generate wealth. And again, like one of the reasons why we're living our story out loud is to try and rebuild that and say, all right, it's not quite the same. Now there's regulations, not saying that everything is clean and clear, but if you don't play, you're gonna miss the next wave. And there are new industries being created right now, from cannabis to technology, where Black people have a real chance of being early entrants. And it's just about, to your point, like cutting your damn cable. Stop eating out so
much.
Like, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but for, you know, a good bit of us who are degreed and salaried and working at corporate, you know, employers, it is that simple.
It is just that simple. Like you can invest just as easily and just as automated and never even see it as you could have a Spotify account. You know what I mean? Like I know a bunch of people that have it and don't even really listen to it, but they pay $10 a month and or cloud storage, right? We're talking about the same money, something that you have probably 2 or 3 of, and you don't even think twice about it. All we're saying is do that with something that grows. That's it. And let it go and don't cut it. Just keep doing it. Treat it like.
And that's what I finally did. Like I opened a Charles Schwab account because I wanted the checking account because it's good for travel. And when I got there, the guy like totally upsold me on like, oh, you should open this brokerage account. I'm like, I don't got no money, but I just want this free checking account. And it's sad that I let it sit for like probably 2 years with like $25 in it. Honestly, like I put the initial invest, like that's all I needed, and I didn't put anything else. And then one day I was like, they email you like weekly some type of book or investment tips, and I started reading it, and then I found like a mutual fund, like, and I just was like, I was so afraid, like I can't lose no money, but I will spend, at the time, like I was spending like $100 a month at Starbucks. So, and I'm like, what? Like, just do it. So now I have it where it's like $65 a paycheck or something like that. Just goes there. And like you said, you don't even see it.
Exactly.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
I love it.
So what are your financial goals for this year, which 2019? And for like your next 3 years? I know that's the time frame you threw out earlier in the podcast, but like, what are some of your financial goals where you guys are? You don't have any debt really, and you're ready to get towards your financial independence date?
Oh, that's a good question because we're still working through them. In 2018, we went from a 2-income house to a 1-income house. Julien left his job after 10 plus years. So we have made some big adjustments financially just in how we budget. I think for 2019, our big goal is to try and make some headway in paying down the debt on our investment property. So we still have a small mortgage on that one, and we'd like to own that free and clear like the other investment property that we have. What else is on our list for 2019?
Our blog has been great. The response has been wonderful. We were featured in Glamour magazine, their final
Awesome.
their final print edition, their money issue. There's a write-up on us in the back. There's a film coming out about the FIRE movement called Playing with Fire. We are in that film as well. We had a really great partnership with The Atlantic and so on. And so our goal is to continue doing things like that to help grow the Rich and Regular blog, to help turn that into a business, and to use the knowledge that we've attained over the last couple of years, from real estate investing to financial investing and or financial independence, budgeting, and even down to cooking, because that's a big part of what we do. We want to start sharing that with people under the Rich and Regular name. And so that's the goal, is to put all of those into motion for 2019 and beyond.
And I think
Awesome.
I think my personal financial goal for 2019 is just not to freak out. Like the market is doing the wobble right now. It is quite shaky, and there's a lot of losses on paper, right? When you see, your portfolio balance go down, you start to wonder, like, is that real? And it's not. It's any loss on paper is not realized until you withdraw or sell. And so our goal is to stay the course, to continue buying. Like Julien mentioned, this is like a year-long, 2-year-long, however long it lasts, Black Friday sale. And so to keep investing, don't lose confidence. Obviously, don't be stupid, but don't freak out like that. It's a mindset thing for me in 2019.
So before we wrap up, I do this thing on the podcast called The Breakdown. And so I'm going to shoot out one word and you say the first thing that comes to mind. It could be a phrase. It could be a sound. It could be a word.
All right.
Okay. You both can go for each one.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Freedom.
Damn. Freedom. Shit. I'm coming up blank. You go first.
Oh, gotta have it.
Freedom, gotta have it. I like that. I'm gonna steal that one as my answer too.
Generational wealth.
Critical.
Necessary.
Student loans.
The devil.
Satan.
Cooking.
Hate it.
Passion.
Happiness.
A state of mind.
Wine.
Rich.
Regular.
Julien.
And last one, debt.
The worst.
Depends.
I like it. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on the Boonie Breakdown. Before we wrap up, if you can share where everyone can find you on social media, on the internet. List all your stuff. Shout out time.
We're at richandregular.com. And then we're also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Rich and Regular.
Perfect. So again, thank you so much. Please go follow Rich and Regular everywhere. Sign up for their newsletter. They send out good tips. And be sure to watch out for all the amazing things that they do in 2019. And hopefully they'll add a podcast to the brand as well. We're coming full circle. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks again to Kiersten and Julien for coming on the podcast. You know, I told you guys this episode was going to inspire you to look at your money a little differently. Okay. I know it has helped me as I research more about financial independence. And could you imagine like potentially losing the love of your life because of credit card debt? Like, oh my God, I'd die. So let's all start working and pushing to eliminate this debt and finding a partner that's going to help us level up, okay? So if you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to listen and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts, or any app that you listen to your favorites on. Don't forget to leave a review, too. You might just hear your review on the next episode. Follow us on social media. Share the episode with those you love, those you don't love, those you fucking hate. I don't make those pretty images and audiograms for nothing, okay? Have a dope-ass week. Thank you for listening. And remember, the ratchet in me always honors the ratchet in you. Namaste. Until next time.